Fans of Marvel movies have been criticized for years now because we've been calling out problems within the MCU as a whole, and media outlets just didn't like hearing what we had to say. But now that things are starting to change, where they're actually feeling comfortable enough to kind of agree with us and say, like, yeah, there is problems with the MCU. Now, I did read this article from Comic Book Resources earlier, and I do agree that they kind of have the right idea that there is issues within the MCU, but I think they messed up the landing because they haven't quite arrived at what I think is the correct conclusion for this matter. So the MCU made one crucial mistake with its TV series. Now, again, I think there was multiple mistakes they have, but if you were to pin out one thing, I think it is a little different than what they say, but it's in the ballpark at least. And it kind of goes into within this article about how, like, after Endgame, they started launching their Disney Plus shows and things like that to try to expand the MCU. And that's where they're having issues with the shows itself. WandaVision was the biggest success of all time. The MCU TV series, followed closely by Loki. Both of these series were on the opposite end of the spectrum as far as series length. WandaVision was 9 episodes long and told an in-depth story about loss and grief. This was then continued in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Loki told a very condensed story that looked at the evolution of Loki and set up Kang as the future MCU villain. WandaVision found success because the series was given a lot of space to grow its story and its characters. Loki is one of the few shows to successfully use the 6-episode format because Loki had so much time in the MCU films. Okay, in this paragraph right here, they basically say what the problem is, but they didn't quite arrive at the right conclusion with it. Did anyone else catch what it was? Here, let me go back to it. Where is this at? Okay, WandaVision was 9 episodes long and told an in-depth story about loss and grief. This was then continued in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Loki told a very condensed story that looked at the evolution of Loki and set up Kang as the future MCU villain. The problem with their shows now is they don't have character development. The 2 successful shows that they're talking about actually had character development, but these also pointed out errors in the shows as well. Loki was setting up Kang as the future villain. WandaVision was setting up Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and that's the issue that we have with all the other shows coming out there, the ones that aren't succeeding. All they're doing is just focusing on setup. They're not focusing on character development. Like, this points out that, like, oh, well, a lot of these shows only have 6 episodes. That's not enough time to actually set up characters and establish the stories or whatever with them. Yes, it is. Assuming that each episode is only 20 minutes long, and I know they vary in length. Most of them are longer than that, but let's say every 6-episode series only had 20 minutes to actually flesh out the characters. Look at something like Iron Man, 2 hours and 6 minutes, including credits. 20 minutes for a 6-episode series is 2 hours. They were able to set up Iron Man within that time frame and made him a beloved character in just that one film. Captain America had the exact same amount of time. Thor had an even less time, but that was able to establish that. You know why? Because these were actual movies made by talented filmmakers. You got Kenneth Branagh here, Joe Johnston, Jon Favreau. These are talented filmmakers who are trying to set up characters and actually just tell their story. They weren't just concerned with setting up the next thing. Yeah, granted, the phase 1 of the MCU was still set up for future projects, but at the same time, they treated them as individual projects. The thing with the Marvel shows now is they're literally all just set up. Yeah, every once in a while, when you have an established character like Wanda or Loki, you can kind of flesh them out a little bit because people are already familiar with them. But when you get brand new characters like Moon Knight or anything like that, or even the Skrulls from Secret Invasion, which are still pretty new to the rest, or for the most part, for MCU fans, it doesn't give them enough time to actually do anything, or it does give them enough time to do something, but they don't actually know how to do it because all they know how to do is setup, and setup is not character development. And that's ultimately why I disagree with this article from Comic Book Resources, because like I said, there's an issue with timing here, and the issue is not the fact that they don't have enough time. The issue is just simply the fact that the writers of these shows and the showrunners don't know how to use the time that they're given. If you actually had talented people behind the scenes working on these shows, I think these shows could be fantastic. You can get the most obscure MCU character and actually make something great out of it. I mean, look at what James Gunn did with the Guardian of the Galaxy. He established a team of characters in one movie. I mean, he established every character, their personalities, like basically what their skill sets are, pretty much everything, and fleshed out all these characters in one movie because he's actually a talented writer and director. If you had someone like James Gunn working on this, it would actually be fantastic. But instead, what you do is you just hire a bunch of people who don't know what they're doing because they'll just follow orders and do what the MCU tells them to do. I mean, we've already heard stories in the past about how other talented directors pretty much have been turned off from working with Marvel. I mean, first they pretty much turned off Joss Whedon. You got rid of Edgar Wright and like a bunch of other people. I mean, the only time you'll get a talented director like Sam Raimi, I mean, you still don't even see his influence in like Multiverse of Madness because Disney and Marvel just basically keep them on a leash and no one wants to work for that. And the only people who are willing to work for them are basically people who have no track record to speak of and will take any type of work, especially on a big project like this. So if Disney and Marvel wants to actually fix the MCU shows, what you need to do is start hiring talented writers and directors and basically showrunners for these and give them the freedom to actually do what they need to do to make these shows successful. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And if you like this video, make sure you click the like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date with the latest news. Thank you.